I don't know whether you can, first of all, describe what is a revolving account?
Oh, okay, sure. While you're looking for that, let me first describe that revolving accounts are self-supporting checking accounts, if you will. Although I don't like to use the word checking account because we don't have a checkbook and we don't manage it that way. But some call them enterprise accounts. But each of the revolving accounts are separate from funds that are appropriated at town meeting. And they all focus around a given activity. A good example of a revolving account would be the middle school ski fund. There is an activity whereby middle school children pay a transportation and a lift ticket fee, and chaperones are hired to provide evening skiing at a local ski lift. So it's a distinct activity that that is not appropriated. And what also characterizes the revolving funds is that the funds are not reverted. They carry over at the end of the fiscal year. They're a never-ending activity. So as a result of a request from the Finance Committee, put together a report showing what the beginning balances were at the beginning of this current fiscal year and what the current balances are in each of the revolving accounts. 7, 12, 13, 14. There are 14 revolving accounts. And the Finance Committee also asked that we provide a little bit of a definition for the purpose of each and every one of these revolving accounts. And I've done that on this handout. Now, Mr. Chairman, how much detail would you like me to go through? Or how would you like me to handle this?
I don't know if we need to go through each one. I mean, I think if you want to quickly, you know, say what all of the revolving accounts are, but I think the bottom line is if you look at these, is that the majority of them by the end of the year aren't going to have a whole lot of money in them to be put anywhere else. That most of them get close to zero by the end of the year. Is that correct? I mean, our largest, obviously, the two largest are transportation and athletic.
Yes.
So I mean, if you wanted to focus on those two, but I guess I don't see a need to go through all of them. But if you wanted to, also full day kindergarten, if you just wanted to highlight, I don't know if there's any you want to highlight here.
Why don't I do that? And I'd also want to state that there's not a lot of flexibility in some of these funds. For example, let's talk about the three largest funds, as you suggest. The athletic revolving account. The funds that we raise to deposit in the athletic revolving fund in descending order would be first user fees that the athletes pay. Secondly, you'd have some gate receipts for those sports activities that charge. And thirdly, you have some vending money. We've had a tradition of depositing vending money from the vending machines in the athletic revolving account. So those are the sources of revenue. The manner in which we expend the money is solely on athletics. We supplement coaching salaries and athletic consumables and expenses and uniforms, things of that nature out of athletic. So we're not allowed to take this athletic revolving account money and hire an English teacher or supplement bus transportation. I mean, there are strict rules about revolving funds, and we follow them pretty carefully, and the finance director makes sure we follow them pretty directly. So, so the athletic revolving account, my best prediction that at the end of this current fiscal year, the balance in athletic revolving will be in the $30,000 range.
I guess the question I would have for you, the main question I have on revolving accounts is there a danger in running them down to zero every year? And if there isn't, why don't we do that and apply those funds to athletics or bus or whatever?
Okay. I think there is a danger to bring them down to zero. I think you should have some operating balance in particularly athletic. Now, we can, reasonable people can disagree on what that balance is, But for example, it's not unusual, things break. You know, we had to replace the football scoreboard about 4 years ago.
Right.
We're now beset with a broken scoreboard here in the middle school gymnasium.
Right.
And from time to time, the athletic director will recommend buying a new set of uniforms for a given sport. And you plan these things, but those are large, not capital investments, but it's not, you can spend between $5,000 and $10,000 on a set of uniforms for an entire team pretty easily. So, $30,000 balance at the end of the year, possibly that's on the high end. You know, we can try to bring that down, and by doing that, what we do is we increase the offset against the operating budget, and that would free up some money. There was a point in time when we were discussing the use of athletic revolving money for field renovation. We haven't done that, but you can build up the balance over a period of 3 to 5 years and make a capital investment. So the school committee can make those kinds of decisions. Does it want to bring up a balance to do something of a larger nature, or does it want to keep that balance down in the $10,000 to $20,000 range every year, given the times? That's more of a philosophical question, but that's the reason I think we bring this to you, to have you comment on that.
And most of these have very small, a good half of them have really small balances right now. Others have larger balances, but you'll have spent a lot more by the end of the school year, correct?
Oh, yes. And the example I would use is that there's a revolving account called the GIFTS revolving account, and that each of the 5 schools endeavors to raise funds through many activities. Their work with the parent groups, as one example, magazine drives, things of that nature. And like it or not, the principals are depending to a larger degree than ever on using funds from the gift revolving account to supplement their operating budgets this year. Remember, we froze those operating budgets in late October. They're challenged with a lot of needs, you know, whether it's something as mundane as ink cartridges or something more serious. So the gift revolving account is being relied on more and more to get us through this current fiscal year. You mentioned I should touch upon the larger ones. The other examples of revolving accounts, of course, would be the full-day kindergarten program. And that is a program where we house the tuition receipts we receive for full-day kindergarten children. And we expend out of that the costs of running the full-day kindergarten program, teaching staff primarily, as well as supplies. And the last one I'll mention, unless there are more questions in terms of size, is the bus transportation revolving account. The receipts for that revolving account are the user fees that parents pay to transport their children, assuming those children are not in a free busing category. And the expenses from that are solely the cost of transportation. We pay the bills to the bus company out of that. So I think it's important for us to publish this information or discuss this every so often, because at times people think that the revolving accounts are kind of these secret caches of money, when in fact they're pretty mundane and they all have very specific designated purposes, and we're very careful to stay on track with those. So that's a brief look at revolving accounts.
Next we have, David, are we going to do the recommendation changes or additions at the high school for the 2009-10 program of studies? I obviously don't see John here tonight.
No,
so.
I spoke with John and also Pam Bowden today about this, and given where we are in the budget, Mr. Bernard is just going to move forward for the time being with the current program of studies with no changes.
Okay. Now, does he have time to make changes if we make decisions that affect the budget for the high school, or does this have to be done now?
Well, what he'd like to do is go forward and print the program of studies and start to have students selecting classes. but I think that there are questions that I have on this list in terms of staffing and how it's going to be done and expenses and training and all that. So I would not be recommending all of these changes at this point.
Okay.
And if there are any changes that can be accomplished without changes in staff, then, you know, we'll.
Yeah, I guess-
Yeah, because you mentioned that some of them didn't require new teachers.
Right, the ones that, in the foreign language area, having an option of both an honors and an academic class, and then when you get up into the 4th and 5th years, just honors, that made sense to me in a lot of cases. I think if we could accomplish that without adding staff, I think giving a kid a chance who wants to take honors in a foreign language, because right now it's all academic, so if someone wants to.
I think we need to explore whether or not that can be done within the context of a senior class.
Right.
Okay, so I get, okay. So students could be learning at different levels in the same. Okay.
Well, it's great, that's the kind
It
of
is
thinking
great,
outside the
exactly.
box that
Right.
we need for, especially the foreign language, like, need some.
Okay, next we have a report on staffing. Kind of touched on it, but.
I gave you, that's actually an updated one, because our numbers weren't coming out exactly to the 215 teachers, but it is useful every year to step back and take a look at our staff. But we have currently 215 teachers or professionally certified staff members. And the breakdown is interesting. 1/3 of the 215, 1/3, 33% of our teachers are what the Department of Education would term non-professional teacher status. It means that they are in the first, second, or third year of employment in our schools. And 145, or just about 2/3, have been employed at least 3 years in North Reading. And once you're employed by a school district for 3 years, you get professional teacher status. So that's an astounding number, because, I mean, we see it every September when the transcript prints the pictures of all the new people coming on board, but it speaks to the turnover. It speaks to the number of people retiring, the number of people going out on leave, the number of people who are just not continuing on with us, plus the fact that over the last 3 years, sometimes we let people go and then we add back in. And when you start looking at this from the standpoint of human resources and personnel, just the recruitment piece alone, and what's required to bring new people on. And we do that without we don't have a human resources director. Carl and I and the principals and everyone else, that's part of our job. But it's recruitment. We go to teacher recruitment fairs, we spend money on advertisements. We have just decided that we are now going to join collaboratively with other school districts to advertise electronically. So we'll be moving away from the newspaper ad, and we'll be looking for people to submit their applications online as a way of, one, saving money, because in the long run it will reduce the cost of advertisement. A typical ad in the paper is $2,000 plus. And so we're going to be going with a recruitment service, or it's not it is a recruitment service, because they're able to post our vacancies, and that goes up on the internet. And that we can then go, the principals can say, I'm looking for an English teacher with this kind of experience, and be able to sort through. Typically, if we put an ad up, we're going to get 400 applications. And so think about the amount of time that it takes just to go through those before you narrow that down. So there's a recruitment piece, and then